Now, it's time for the Anchormen Podcast with Dan Ball and Riley Lewis.
Hey everybody, welcome into the Anchormen Podcast. Dan Ball here, and this week I am without my friend and sidekick, empty chair, Riley. Riley Lewis is on a little vacation. I believe he's down in Cabo, he told me, for his brother's wedding. So we wish his brother happy nuptials, safe travels to Riley. He will be back next Friday on the Anchormen Podcast. So since I'm solo, I thought I would do something a little different. Typically we have one guest and we feature them for the entire hour-long show. Well, the other day we did a segment on my talk show, Real America, and we interviewed someone, and I posed a question on social media, and we said, pretty simply, is journalism dead? And the majority of you sounded off and said, yeah, unfortunately it is in America. I'd say globally. Journalism, for the most part, independent, free-thinking, can't be bought and paid for journalism at a, let's say, national network level, especially mainstream, yeah, it's all bought and paid for. So I would agree with a lot of you. It's kind of dead. So on tonight's show, to help me get through the hour without Riley here, but also to really get to know these two different individuals and to talk about the state of journalism and, of course, touch some of the biggest subjects of the day that are affecting your family, my family, everybody in this amazing republic. We're going to feature two folks tonight that you've seen on probably both Riley and I's normal talk shows. And that is independent journalist and RAV reporter Ben Bergquam, who has been out there the last several years on every big story that you can think of. You'll learn more about Ben, his coming to Jesus moment of becoming an independent journalist and the stories he's covered. And in the last half hour of tonight, you're going to see a veteran like me who did 30 plus years, then got into politics and is now working in the Trump administration, Miss Kari Lake. So without further ado, let's bring on our first guest tonight on the Anchormen Podcast, my good friend and fellow journalist. There he is, Ben Bergquam. I was going to say back on the show, but this isn't Real America. This is the Anchormen. Ben, nice to see you, brother. How you been? Oh, we lost his audio. We got that fixed. Let's see if we can get it fixed.
Yeah, hey, sorry about that. I want to make sure you weren't getting the leaf blowers with the illegals working behind me. So I turned off I muted my mic there for a second. But it's great to be with you, Dan. Honored to join your show.
The illegals behind you. Well, we know there's a few of them, and we know you've been out there on the front lines, Ben, of the ICE deportations, of the radical left crazy protests, and not just since the deportation started earlier this year. You've been out there on the front lines, Ben, and I've been using you to pop on my show to discuss all sorts of stories that have been making headlines, like I said here in your intro. But before we get to all of that, I always want to let the viewers know who our guests are, because I feel like in the normal talk show cycles, right, that most Americans are used to watching, we do a 52-minute show, because you got to minus the commercials out of the full hour, right? And typically most talk shows, I don't care if they're on RAV, our network, OAN, Fox, CNN, whatever, most of the talk shows have 4 to 5 guests a night. And by the time you read the stories and then you intro the guest and you tell the viewer who the guest is and their expertise, you all get about 5 minutes to talk. So in this one, you're going to get more. And so I want to start with who the heck is Ben? Because I feel like people see your posts, see you on our network, see you on the network you work for, but they don't know who Ben Bergquam, the guy, is. And how did you get into journalism? That's the key for me. So take us back. Where were you born? Talk about mom and dad, and we'll get up to like high school, college, adult years with you, and then we can get into you going into journalism. So fill us in, Ben.
Well, man, we need more than a half hour and even an hour for that one. So let me go as quickly as I can through this. I was telling you before the show, I'm actually working on my first book. It's titled Step Into Fear, and I'm going to give you guys a little sneak peek of that. Some of the book goes into my early years, my addiction years. I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going on about 10 years of sobriety from crack addiction and alcoholism. And
good for you.
So it's a wild ride. But my journey starts in Dallas, Texas. I was born in Baylor Hospital. My parents were missionaries overseas in Africa.
Wow.
And they came on furlough to have me. We lived in Dallas for about a year, and then we moved back to Africa. And I spent my first 5 years of life in Nigeria, Burkina Faso, and Niger, where my sister was actually born in Nigeria. So she kind of like Elon Musk. I have an African-American sister. But she actually had to renounce her citizenship. That's one of the countries you can't have dual citizenship with, Nigeria and America, one of the few that you can't. And so we moved to America. We were actually on furlough again, came to California. We were supposed to be there for 3 weeks. That turned into 30 years. And I spent my adolescent years in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. I went to a little school called Sierra High School up in the foothills outside of a little town called Toll House or Prather. And I grew up there. And then I went to Fresno State, got 2 degrees, my undergraduate in kinesiology, exercise science, and my graduate got my MBA. And then I went into corporate retail for a few years. All through this time, I was, I felt God's call in my life. I was the team captain of our football team. Actually, football was my life until I graduated high school. But by the time I graduated, I was planning on going out to college. There was like no doubt in my mind. I was looking at colleges to go play for. But by the time I graduated, I had 7 concussions, officially probably closer to 9. And I was having headaches every day, and it just, my career ended. And so I went through about 4 years of depression, drinking, and some poor choices, and then met my wife, and we just celebrated our 20th year of marriage, and ended up speaking when the Tea Party came around. At the 9/12, or actually before that, the Tax Day Tea Party event in Fresno. And I was actually walking back to my car. I kept praying that the Lord would fill that hole that football had filled originally. And I couldn't find anything that had that same passion. And I was walking my mom back to my car that night after speaking at this Tea Party event in Fresno. And I felt the Lord say, this is that thing that's going to fill that void in your life. This is the mission I have you on. And so that was basically the beginning of my political career, was the Tea Party. And then I finished my degrees. I've gotten a few personal issues. I was helping on political campaigns, and got really sick, got mono, was just exhausted all the time, ended up having a fatal accident I was involved in, and went from having turned my life around at one point to then back to alcohol, which ended up turning to crack. And for about 3 years, I lived a double life. I just kept praying that nobody would know about it, that God would break the chains, but that my wife wouldn't find out about it. And it wasn't until the night I came clean to my wife almost 10 years ago in October that the Lord said to me, you kept praying that she wouldn't know when she was the only one that needed to. Your chains are broken, you're set free. And from that moment on, in 2015, 2016, from that moment on, God set me on this path. And originally it was activism, conservative activism, and actually reporting a lot for OAN back in the day. For those that remember the Graham Ledger show, I was reporting on border issues, and I just kind of felt
show years ago in 17 or 18. You were probably working with him when I was running for Congress before I even knew what OAN was.
Yeah, all around that same time. So I kind of fell into I was never trained as a journalist. I was just pissed off, and I was a good communicator. And I saw that in California, I saw the way things were going, and I said, well, why is nobody standing up and challenging this stuff? Why is all that we have out there liberal media? And most of the time they're complicit with all this bad stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
So I just started doing it. And so I started off my career by going and confronting people like Gavin Newsom. I actually objected to him being sworn in as governor, and I got deported from the event. That was my first deportation from a liberal event.
I like that.
And then I just kept going. And what actually was the catalyst that launched me into the border was meeting angel families. I met Agnes Gibney, and I thought, what the hell? How can we have American citizens being murdered by illegal aliens, and our government's protecting the illegal aliens? And so that sent me down the road, a 9-year journey of covering the border, to where that's really my primary subject. But really what my call, Dan, in life is God, family, country. So if it fits into those 3 things, God is the foundation, raising strong families as the pillar of our communities that then end up creating a strong country. And if we don't get those things right, everything else falls apart. If we get them right, we have a chance. And so that's my focus. Everything falls into that.
Amen. All right. Lots to unpack. And by the way, you did all that in like 10 minutes. So I'm like, whoa, you're used to the normal talk shows and newscasts you do where they're like, Ben, we need you to fit all this in 2 minutes.
Yeah. We could, I'll delve in where you want me to delve.
Exactly.
So
Let's back up. Exactly.
I threw it all out there and you tell me where you want to go.
I didn't know a lot of this stuff, like Texas, missionary parents, the addictions. I did not know.
Yeah.
I knew Ben, the God-fearing patriot family man who is an independent journalist that we can send anywhere around the country and he'll get the dang story. That's who so now we're filling in a lot of gaps. So let me back up. Texas to Nigeria, then to California, Northern California, but you were rural, thank God. So you weren't in a big city with crazy liberals.
Yeah.
Because my whole thing is, how does Ben become Ben and keep conservative Christian values with that childhood where I got to imagine, and I'm not saying your parents were, but your surrounding influences would have been a lot more liberal and probably not as patriotic and not as godly. And again, it was a different time when you were coming up. It's like a different time when I was coming up, but it's still California versus, let's say, where I grew up, Northwest Ohio, where, today you might go, it's a little more liberal, but you didn't say that in the 70s and 80s when I was coming up. California, most people would probably say, even though a Republican ran it, Reagan, in the 70s, that it's been lefty for a long time. So fill us in on how you kept those, or were those values and morals that you learned later in life? Fill me in on where you got that from.
Well, it really starts with that solid foundation. My parents being missionaries. My dad was a pastor for the rest. When we moved back to America, he was a pastor and a teacher, conservative pastor. Mm-hmm. My mom was a nurse. And so I always understood we never had a lot growing up. We always had enough, but we never had a lot. Mm-hmm. And I grew up understanding that everything that you have has to be worked for. I never, I paid my way through college while I had illegal aliens getting free rides sitting right next to me. But up until I was in college, I wasn't super political. I believed all these things. My dad would always play Rush Limbaugh we would drive anywhere. And when I was a kid, it annoyed me. And I'm like, oh, this is so boring, talk radio. Yeah. And then, Rush became one of my heroes. And so in college, when I started actually really thinking about the issues, but I was always taught from an early age to think for myself, kind of going back to the area of California I was in. A lot of people think they lump California into one, a homogenous state. Right. But in reality, it's LA and San Francisco that run the state. And it's the rest of the state that's actually fairly conservative if you get out of those Bay Area bubbles. And so where I'm at was in the Sierra Nevada, very conservative. Where I grew up, it used to be it was a timber harvesting community. Years ago, all of those mills got shut down because they stopped timber harvesting because radical environmentalists. Right. So we had some hardcore conservative, anti-radical environmentalists, mindsets in the schools. Very rural. Ag was a big deal at the high school I went to, and it really wasn't until I went to college at Fresno State. And even Fresno State at the time wasn't that bad, right. But you started having these woke agendas show up. People forget that Pete Wilson was the governor. He was the governor, one of the last governors that I can remember as being a kid. He was a Republican, an actual Republican, not a Arnold Schwarzenegger Democrat pretending to be a Republican, an actual Republican. Right. And so the change happened fairly rapidly in California from being a sane-minded, God-fearing, hardworking state to the cesspool that it is today. And this is my warning to everyone out there. You look at how fast Europe has fallen. Well, you look at how fast people may not realize this, how fast California fell. And now to this point where we're transgender and all of the radical LGBT crap. I got my start at Fresno State helping fight for Prop 8, which was sanctity of marriage between a man and a woman, which passed. People forget that. That passed as a ballot initiative in California. I was a part of that back in college, but it never went into law because we had a tyrannical attorney general at the time, Kamala Harris, who refused to put it in. So all of these people that we're seeing now, there were people that I saw growing up, and I thought, man, these are terrible people. I don't want to be anything like that. I want to work for a living. Why are all these people on welfare getting my money my parents' money. We're barely getting by, and we're having to pay for people that are just bums. Like, they're just worthless. My first job as a kid growing up in the mountains was $3 an hour working for my neighbors, shoveling crap and digging trenches. And I realized if I worked really, really hard, I could make $4 an hour. And so I worked really, really hard. And every job I've ever done, my goal was to be the best at what I did. And that was taught to me. And that's not something, some of this stuff is innate, some of it's learned. And so these things were ingrained in me.
Wait a minute. Don't you have privilege? You should have privilege.
I'm looking for it. I'm looking for that white privilege. I've never seen it. And in reality,
American-born white privilege that you don't have to dig ditches.
I will say this.
You just get stuff handed to you, right? Isn't that what the left always claims when they try to incite a race war, a political war, and divide Americans? It's, the whites have it and black and brown, and they're doing the same thing with the border. You said you've made your bones now as a journalist covering the border and lots of other stuff. We'll get to that in a second. And the border argument, the deportation now fight and argument is always racism. Ben, you've been down there. Didn't Joe allow people in from about 163 different countries over 4 years? And I'm pretty sure they're not all black and brown. There's some white, red, and yellow skins in there too. It has nothing to do with racism, but they always want to go to that. Anyway, sorry I went on that tangent. Go ahead.
Yeah, racism is the argument for weak-minded people that can't win in the arena of ideas. That's really what this is becoming. And it only worked because we let it. And this is why we're in the position we're in. California fell because we had a weak generation that said, I don't want to be called names. I don't want to be called a racist. I don't want to be called a bigot or a homophobe. And so I just won't say no. I'll just say, fine, do what you want to do. I don't want to fight this. I don't want you to attack me. Cancel culture started in states like California.
And
so people just said, well, I don't want you to cancel me, so I'll just go along with this bad idea.
Right.
And that's why we're in the position we're in. And back to your point of white privilege. Yes, I'm privileged. Every single person that's born is privileged. We are blessed to be alive. And in particular, if you live in America, you live in the greatest country in the history of the world, regardless of the color of your skin, white, black, brown. You should be thankful that you were born here, that however your ancestors got here, that they got here, and they're not in some crap hole country. That, by the way, in Africa, many of the countries still have slavery. I was actually, my driver to get to the airport today was from Nigeria. And he was talking to me about how he came over here escaping Islam to get here, and how they wanted to kill him because he was a Christian in Nigeria. And now he got here, and it's the same people here, the same Islamists here. And ironically, it's the same Islamic countries in Africa, in northern Africa, in Sudan, in Mauritania, in Eritrea, in these countries that still have slavery today that we ignore, but yet. Instead of dealing with that and saying, hey, you're in a blessed country here. There's a reason why that this is such a great country. You are blessed to be here. You have privilege if you live here. You should be thankful for that. And then honor it by working hard and trying to make the country a better place for your kids and your grandkids. But instead, we have this victim mindset that tells people, based on the color of your skin, that you will or will not be successful, which is the worst kind of racism, bigotry that you can have. I say judge everybody.
It's identity
on the content
politics,
of their character.
Ben. It's identity politics. The left has mastered identity politics, right? They divide us on our economic status, on our gender and sex. They divide us on the issues with our gender, race, economic. So whether it's on the border, whether it's on what they teach in school, it's always divide. That's what they do. That's the only way they can win. And
that's right.
They've had the help of, and this is the main reason I wanted you and Carry on tonight, is to talk about journalism. Because the fourth state used to be, when I got in it 33 years ago, when I went in as a journalist in the military, working for the Armed Forces Radio Television Service, or AFRTS, I got in thinking, I'm going to do this great, cool thing. It's like a mission where I'm informing and entertaining the troops. Right? And when we go to war, I'll document the war, I'll tell the soldiers' stories, and I'll let the American people back home know what's happening. Well, then I found out you really can't tell the truth as a journalist in the military either, because, let's be real, the higher-ups tell you what you can and can't say to the troops when you're a journalist. And so I'm like, I got out, and then I went into civilian journalism, and I thought when I got in that back in 96, 97, that I was going to be out there doing good for the people, right? That's my mission. Like you discussed, you're on a mission. And after a couple decades, and then obviously when Trump came on the scene in 15, 16, I'm looking at my colleagues and counterparts in the media going, you lying SOBs.
Right.
Like,
right.
You do lie. Trump is right. You are fake news.
That's
and
right.
so you got us through a lot of stuff with the family, the missions, the moving, the addictions, where you went to. I lived in Fresno, by the way. I used to work at the CBS affiliate. Was it Fresno Bulldogs? No.
Yeah.
Bulldogs.
Go Dogs.
Yeah.
Yes,
the TV studio was right down from the campus. I want to know then how you go, because you're in the corporate world, and then you decide, I'm going to go be an independent journalist. And so you said you just started sticking your cell phone or a small handy cam in people's faces and posting it, and that's it? Like, how does that go to, then I'm on RAV, I'm on OAN, I'm getting interviewed, like, gap that for me. Fill that gap.
God's hand through all of it. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for God's call in my life and his guiding hand through this. And everyone always asks me, how did you get to where you are today? Where I'm standing here, I'm talking to you, I'm doing what I'm doing. And my answer is very simple. You say yes the first time. God will call you to do something that probably you're uncomfortable doing, and you do that first thing. And that first thing leads to the second thing, that leads to the next thing, the next thing. You don't have to know. Most of the time, you won't know what that end result will be. But all you have to do is say, yes, Lord, I will do it. And half the time, you don't even know what you're walking into.
God's got the playbook for you. You don't. I totally agree with you.
Yep. And so I just started showing, I was like, okay, where are the lies coming from? And I agree with you. Mainstream media is dead. In fact, there was a vacuum in mainstream media. It's basically propagandists. They're like the Nazi propagandists that would just push the narrative, or the communist propagandists, choose your dictatorship or totalitarian government. That's what we had and still have in the mainstream media in America. There was a vacuum in it, and I said, well, I'm just going to go. I didn't go out of my way to start being a journalist. I went out of my way to start confronting and exposing the lies of the left, which ultimately led me into journalism.
Okay.
And so I just started going to city council meetings, board of supervisor meetings, state house. I'd go to the state capitol.
What time frame is this? And then
2016, 2017.
Okay. So only 10 years ago you started this, and you had that.
It was immediate.
Okay.
Now, even when I was still in and out of the addiction, I was still politically connected because I'd set all that foundation early on in the Tea Party. And so I would still go from time to time and confront the left. But as soon as God turned my life around, it was within a week, I was back out doing what he had called me to do. And within several weeks, I had left my job. I basically went for 2 years with no income. I felt God's call in this fight. I got beat over the head in Berkeley. I've one of the cover of the book is the picture of me with my Stop Liberal Intolerance
that. Ben's
and blood.
bloody head. That's one of the things that got you viral on social media, right? Was you covering that stuff at Berkeley and you getting attacked, and then everybody knew who Ben Bergquam was because a lefty.
Well, they
bashed
didn't.
you in the
They
head.
still didn't. Yeah, they still didn't know who I was. That picture went viral, but no, my name didn't. And actually, I was known as people thought I was the bike lock guy, which I wasn't. I was a different guy. But all of this, it was a very quick time frame. But I had that because of that network I had built before my addiction. I had friends, Jim Patterson, who actually worked he was a state assemblyman, and then Jim Franklin, they both ran a radio station, a Salem affiliate radio station. And I thought, well, if I'm going to get legitimacy in what I'm doing, because I try to go to these hearings and then say, well, you can't just come in here with a cell phone. You're not a journalist. I'm like, well, okay, well, let me become a journalist. So I actually paid for my first slot on a Salem radio affiliate out of Fresno, AM 1680 at the time, just to get I had an hour a week program on Saturdays that I paid for. By the way, this was at the same time I had no money. And so I'm telling my wife, I'm like, babe, I can't explain this. I know I just came out of addiction. I know I don't have an income coming in, but God has called me to this. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to start paying for a radio show that I know we don't have money for.
She must have thought you were nuts.
My wife is incredible. She did. I mean, we for the first 9 months, it was difficult. She's like, Ben, you got to get a job. You got to get a job. You got to get a job. And then slowly but surely, God every single month provided. And it was the most amazing thing where God brought our relationship, made it stronger than ever. And it made us trust him in a way that we couldn't have trusted him had we not gone through that period where we had nothing. And we had literally relying on him every single month, every single day. And that ended up leading me into becoming the guy, because no one else was doing it. I started covering the border. I started going into Mexico. I met great guys like Oscar Ramirez and Anthony Aguero. And I started covering that, and I became I became the guy, ended up speaking at an event in Washington, D.C. I'm going to bring it all together real fast. Speaking at an event in Washington, D.C., I met the team from Real America's Voice News, who was just nobody knew who they were at the time. They were just on social media at the time, and I went away from that event thinking I met Tudor Dixon, and I thought, man, if somebody with that shines that much light, it works at that network. It's got to be a great network. Fast forward a couple weeks, I run into Rob Sigg, the owner of Real America's Voice News, at the bathroom at CPAC, and we bump into each other. We ended up praying together. A couple weeks later, Mark, who works for Rob, says, hey, there's this guy named Ben who spoke at this event in Washington, D.C. He does border stuff. We need a border guy. Why don't we talk to this guy? And Rob's like, well, show me some of his stuff. He shows him my work. He's like, that's the guy I prayed with at CPAC. Get him on the phone. So the next day I'm talking to these guys on the phone. The rest is history. Now I'm working for Real America's Voice News. I get a job. I become the border guy. And
tons of people interview you all the time on podcasters and other networks like myself. I mean, you've been coming on my show for at least 4 years. Ben, let me ask you.
And really, Dan, and let me just say this. It all comes back, the whole thing, everything I'm doing comes back to two things. God's call in my life and me being authentic to that call. The only reason I think people ever listened to me or cared about what I was saying is they trusted what I was saying. Going back to your first question, the reason we say media is dead in America, and it's not. I started off by saying mainstream media is dead. We are the media now. You, me, Kari Lake, the rest of us that are actually telling the truth. We are the media now. Yeah. So we have revived media in America because it was dead, but it's only because of that word, authenticity. If you're fake, we reject you. If you're authentic, we receive you.
Wow. Ben, I learned a lot in about 26 minutes about my friend, Ben Bergquam. I did not know. And so, as we say goodbye to Ben, thank you. That really adds a lot of clarity. While we believe mainstream journalism is dead, journalism as a whole is not dead, because independents like Ben, like myself, like when Kari was in the independent phase or running for office, which she's coming on next here, there's been a lot of independent journalists who are just real, authentic, and folks, you can do it at home. You can grab your phone, go to that city council meeting, go to that school board meeting. Ben's done it. I've done it. Record your elected officials, hold them accountable, and then put it on social media and report what you're seeing. Unvarnished, authentic, and unbiased. And guess what? You just became a journalist, and you're doing better than CNN and most of the hacks at ABC, NBC, and all the rest of them. Ben Bergquam, as always, man, it is a pleasure. I want to end on one thing. Out of all the stuff you've been covering in the last 10 years since you put your journalism hat on, what has been one of the biggest stories of our time that you've covered that is the feather in your hat that you're like, God, thank you for putting me on that story? And I give you the last minute before I bring Kari on.
Well, no doubt, the border. The 4 trips across the Darien Gap, no other journalists have done that with my brother, Oscar Ramirez, covering what the mainstream media refused to cover when Joe Biden and the Democrats were inviting in the invasion. But now we're at the point where our country will either survive or die based on what we do over these next few months and years. 2026 elections are the most important of our lifetime. I just want to encourage your audience, focus on that. But that, to me, I'm blessed. God put me in the right place at the right time to tell the story. And that was it. It's clearly the border, the invasion, and the restoration of America.
Ben Bergquam, independent journalist. The book that will be coming out in the next year or so you're working on is entitled what again?
Step into fear. And this is it. The best parts of my life all started with fear. And the biggest thing about fear is it will either control you or it will differentiate you. And it's what you do with that fear, whether you're courageous with it or not, that defines your life. And so that's what it's all about.
You and I will talk offline. Oliver North's publisher has been harping on me to write a book as well. We've titled it Fearless Patriot, and it's going to be about my life and journalism and a lot of other things. And I will chat with you offline, and you and I will pick each other's brains for our upcoming books. Thank you, Ben. God bless you, your family, and everything you've been doing for this country as independent journalist. You take care, brother.
My pleasure. Tell Kari I said hi. I love her. God bless you,
She probably
brother.
can hear you right now. We'll see if she's in the waiting room. Thank you, Ben. Everybody, if you don't know Ben, go follow him. Ben Bergquam. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't know if Kari is on yet, but that's who we have coming up next. So if you don't know a little bit, let me just text her real fast because that's how we do things here. It's a podcast. I love it. A lot more laid back than our nightly talk shows. So our next guest, who, like myself, had 30 some years, over 3 decades as and I think she's okay with me saying this because we both were in it and blinded and then we woke up. So her and I both did almost 30 some years in mainstream media, if you will, right? We weren't on big national networks, but we worked for the network affiliates in markets around the country. You know, I worked in Vegas and Philly and Palm Springs and Fresno and other places. She was in Phoenix for many, many years. And then, of course, she got into politics, as you know, ran for office. I got into politics, ran for office. We didn't win. That's okay. I think we're winning now. She now, of course, works in the Trump administration. I'll let her tell you about her new gig. And God, like Ben, showed me a new path forward and a new mission and brought me to One America News about 5 years ago, this past August. And I am so grateful to God for showing me this new mission. And I bet Kari is too, because she saw through the lies and the fake news several years ago. And I'll let her in her words tell you why. And she put that microphone down and walked off that set and got involved and started a new mission in her life. So do we have her, guys? Is Kari ready? Is she in the waiting room? Okay, they're getting her ready. You're like in the waiting room. No, not like waiting green room coming out on the set, the old days. Just digital at home on a Zoom link at her house or maybe in DC, wherever she's at. But we should have Kari Lake here any moment to chat about. And this is stuff I don't know about all her background. That's why I love this podcast, because in the talk shows, again, you only get a few minutes. And when we bring those guests on, we got to get right to the topics, get their insight, their take, their expertise. You get 4 or 5 questions and you're done, right? 5, 6, 7 minutes, goodbye. And here you get a half hour, an hour with that person to learn more about who they are as an individual, how they came to be, and what they're trying to do today moving forward with their life. And Kari, watching her and meeting her, being on the campaign trail with her, whether it was for President Trump or her own campaign, or we're chit-chatting on the phone or texting, getting to know this amazing woman over the last 5 years has really been a blessing, because it also reaffirmed for me what I was thinking about when I left the mainstream media industry, right? Because you have fears. You get nervous, like, I'm walking away from a job. Oh my God, what are people going to think? I'm going to go work for this obscure network. I'm going to say my opinion now. I'm going to tell people what I really think now. And for 30 some years, I didn't do that. And I don't think Kari did either. We were actually fair, neutral, unbiased journalists, right? Her and I would go to work and here's the news. We would proof it from our writers and producers, and we would go deliver it to the people living in the cities that we lived and worked in. And we thought we were doing good and telling the truth. And then our eyes got opened up. And I got to tell you, a big thanks is to President Donald J. Trump, because him coming on the scene back in 2015 and starting to talk about the fake news and then showing you, well, here's a story. They said this happened. Now look over here. Stop watching the shiny wag the dog and the sparkles and look at the facts. They just lied to you. And as we wait on Kari, I'll give you one quick example that just happened last week. And you can go look this up, by the way. This is a perfect example of fake news, what they've been doing for decades, and especially the last decade since Trump came on the scene. So last week, House Democrats and the mainstream media soaked it up and said their exact talking points. House Democrats released a couple pics and walkthrough videos of Epstein Island, and they called them never before seen images of Epstein Island, released only by Democrats. Like for some reason, the Democrats were doing more about Epstein Island release than Republicans ever were, and like they were fighting for the truth. Okay, so you can go look it up. I think it was on May 21st, May 15th, somewhere in mid-May. I had James O'Keefe on, the independent undercover journalist, and James released the same video and pictures without redacting the numbers on the phone. Go online, you'll see what I'm talking about. Without redacting anything, James put that out there and was on my show talking about the newly released video and pictures. Fast forward to the first week of December, and 99% of the media lied to you and told you the same talking points Democrats told the world. that they released new, never-before-seen footage of Epstein Island. Complete fake story. That's one example. They do it almost every damn day to you. So I throw this question out to our next guest, Kari Lake. Is journalism dead in America?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Dan. And you just did an incredible stretch, as we call it in television podcast history, because I was having some technical difficulties.
That's fine.
But nobody has to know. But I, you know what? It shows what a great broadcaster you were. That you could have probably stretched for an hour had you needed to, but you managed to.
Look, you and I are Emmy award-winning journalists. Like that matters. They're paperweights. But a couple of those Emmys up behind my head are for filling for about 4 hours when I covered President Gerald Ford's funeral like 20 some years ago. Yeah, that's the first Emmy I ever won, because they were like, we want you out at the funeral and you'll have to stretch in between shows. I think I yacked for 4.5 hours. So filling 4.5 minutes for you, Kari, that was a cakewalk. How you been?
I've been doing great. I've been doing really great. I'm in DC. I'm working with President Trump, and it's a different set of muscles and skills that I'm using, but I'm getting pretty good at it and pretty fluent at it. Is mainstream media dead? I sure hope so. I think mainstream media is truly the enemy of the people, but I want to give some hope, because I believe that media and journalism is not dead.
Thank you.
I think we're actually seeing a resurgence of journalism, real journalism, and we're seeing it in Washington, D.C. It's the center of the universe right now. Everybody wants to be there covering it. It's not Congress. It's not this. It's not the House. It's not the Senate. It's not the judicial. Everyone wants to know what's happening in the executive branch of the United States of America under President Trump. And finally, we have a really great group of people covering it. Yes, we have the usual suspects, but we also have new media and people who are willing to ask questions. It's always the questions that are being asked that sets the narrative. And that's why in the first term of President Trump, the mainstream media was so angry and upset when President Trump said, we'd like to invite more voices in here. Different folks.
Yeah, because an independent citizen journalist than these big, massive conglomerates that aren't even owned by journalists anymore. I mean, when you have major corporations, I remember, and you remember this because you and I have been doing it about the same amount of time, 30 some years. Remember when GE, wasn't it, bought NBC Universal years ago, and they combined them? Like, what does an appliance and whatever company have to do with TV and journalism? And ever since then, all of these entities have been buying and sucking up TV outlets and journalists. And again, how do corporate America CEO overlords know about real journalism? They don't. And then when I saw that happening, I knew our profession was going down the tubes, Kari. And that was probably about 10, 15 years ago.
They bought these radio stations and TV stations to sell their products. I mean, GE was selling GE products. And we've seen that, remember the soap operas? That was programming to sell products to housewives.
Great point. They call
it TV programming, because guess what they're trying to do? Program our brains, right?
That's a
great
point.
I'm saying they didn't want different people other than the usual suspects in the press pool to ask questions, because it's in the questions you ask of the president every day that you set the narrative for the country in the entirety of the media for the whole world.
Great point.
So now we have people in there asking questions that are not part of the talking points of the deep state, whereas before they were. And that's why we're seeing a lot of new narratives breaking out, and they're narratives about the truth.
All right, before we get to your new gig for the president, on this show, because we have more time than the 5 minutes you get on the talk show when I have you on, we got to back up, because I want people at home to know where little Kari came from. So you got to tell me where you're born, a little about mom and pop, where you went to school and then college, and how you got into television journalism. So get me up to that, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, I'll try to do the Reader's Digest version, which I just...
do the 1-2 minute version.
I aged myself by even saying Reader's Digest version. But I grew up in Iowa, the youngest of 9 children. My mom was a nurse, my dad was a teacher and a football coach, and a beloved figure in our community because he coached for 35 years. So nice. I always joke, my dad never paid for a beer, because everywhere he went, somebody that he coached over the years would come up and say, Coach, let me get you a beer. Let's talk about, that great season we had in 1974 or whatever. He was just an incredible man. I mean, truly a legend. And so I had wonderful parents. I'm the youngest of 9. I've come from a family with 8 girls and 1 boy.
Whoa.
I grew up in Iowa. My first 10 years, I grew up in the city in Iowa, which was a city of about 80,000 people. And then when I was 10, my parents moved us to the boondocks, the middle of nowhere, which I thought was actually the middle of everywhere. We lived 10 miles outside of a small town of 247 people. So I got to know farmers and farming and the ag community. And it was such a great way to grow up in Iowa. I love Iowa so much. As a matter of fact, I just bought a place there again.
Really?
Because I love it so much. Yeah, I just was like, I want to have a place where I grew up.
I love that. I'm an Ohio guy. My wife's an Indiana gal. So we're all right there. Kari, Midwest, good, wholesome Ohio, Indiana, Iowa. Love it. Keep going. Love
It's a heartbeat.
I didn't know this.
It's heartbeat. So, I just feel really strongly that a good Midwestern upbringing, just by living there with such good people who are hardworking, it's Midwestern work ethic is really important. And then, as I say, when you grow up in a big family, your work ethic is honed even more. So I graduated from high school at 16 and started college. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I did not want to be a TV news reporter because my dad didn't allow us to watch TV. He thought it was a bunch of junk that was meant. Wow. I know, isn't that ironic? Isn't that ironic?
That is ironic.
We were only allowed to watch TV on the weekends, which meant I got to see The Love Boat and Fantasy Island.
Zipplane. I remember those shows. Those were great shows. I watched them with my grandma, and we watched Little House on the Prairie and Highway to Heaven, and keep going. I love this stuff. You and I are about the same age. We had the same childhoods. I love this stuff.
The funniest thing is when we moved into the country, I really dreaded it. I was like, oh my gosh, moving from the city to the country. But I learned we had a massive garden that we grew so much food that we grew all the food we needed for the entire year. We canned and we froze food. We weren't farmers. We didn't raise livestock, but our neighbors did. So we would, of course, we would either decide to share and slaughter a cow and for our food to feed our family and use that for the year. The funny thing is I realized that we were homesteaders before homesteading was popular.
Huh. Right on. Where'd you go to college?
I went to University of Iowa. I enrolled in college when I was 16 years old. I turned 17 shortly after getting there and worked my way through college. And I don't say that like, oh, wow, I worked my way through college. I think it's impossible to do that now because college has gotten so expensive.
Right.
But when I was going to college, the tuition was like $1,200 a year. I think my rent was like $250 a month, and I worked 20 to 30 hours a week, studied. My parents always said, if you're busy and keeping yourself very busy, you have less time to get in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, I know that saying from my grandma who raised me in Northwest Ohio. Okay, so I'm going to guess this is like early 90s. You're in college. Iowa probably wasn't that woke then yet, maybe. How did you avoid the woke mind virus? And then when do you decide that the degree you're going for turns into a television career that spanned 30 some years? Fill that gap for me.
Well, thank you for saying the early 90s. I mean, I did graduate in the early 90s, but I started in the late 80s. 86 is when I went to college.
Okay, I was close.
Close. Thank you. I went for a couple of years and I ran out of money. It was just too hard. So I ended up quitting after 2 years and getting a job.
Okay.
As a salesperson in a radio station. And I guess I impressed the boss enough to hire me.
Here we go.
Because he thought I was much older. He hired me at like the preeminent radio station in the area. Like everyone around me was in their 50s. They've been doing radio sales for 20 years. And here I was, I think I was 17 or 18 at the time. And he thought I was, much older than that. Then he found out how young I was. And the great thing was I'd never sold anything before in my life. Radio sales is so much like journalism. You're trying to tell a story and make a sale and make a pitch. And in a weird way, there's a little bit of that in journalism. You want your storytelling to be interesting and
believable. People trust you. Yeah.
And to garner someone's attention. Yes. Sales is about trust. You have to
relationships, right? Relationships. They didn't watch you, and we'll get to Phoenix in a second. They didn't watch you for decades in the Phoenix market, Kari, because they loved NBC or whatever affiliate you worked with, they watch you because they trusted Kari Lake.
That's
you
right.
built that trust. All right, so take me from sales. Yep.
I'm 18. I'm at this like really top station, and we're right next to a TV station. And in the like coffee, with the water fountain or whatever, you'd run into people who were on TV, and I'm like, oh, that I didn't even realize that was like a job, like a local job. So it's the first time I ever even thought about being in TV, that I happened to work in radio sales.
And this is Iowa still. We're still in Iowa.
Meantime, I'm doing radio sales, making cold calls, doing the hardest thing ever, going to businesses that are struggling and asking them to buy a radio spot. And but it was a great, 1 year. I did that for 1 year. Then I decided I'm going to try to make this really short. I went and lived with my sister in Minneapolis before it was Somalia land. And her husband was a huge, he watched the local news like a fanatic. And I never had watched the local news. And he knew everybody's name. He knew the weathermen. He knew the reporters. And so just by living with them, I was kind of absorbing that. I lived with them for about 6 months to a year, and I decided to go back and finish my degree. And when I went back to finish my degree, I talked to my college counselor, and I said, I think I want to be a reporter. I love people. I love talking to people. I love telling people stories. And, I just set my course toward becoming a journalist. And I did so in a record amount of time. Had a paid job in the professional world before I even graduated from college because I was so zoned in.
Yeah.
Wanted to do that.
What market was that? Where did you get on television? The first market, because you know what I'm going to do. You and I are going to do DMA comparison markets, because I jumped around like 5 different markets in my 33 years to get where I'm at. And you jumped around a little bit, but you pretty much settled in Phoenix for many, many years. So get me up to Phoenix, and then we'll get to your bid for office.
My first on-air job was in the Quad Cities, which is my hometown, which is the Iowa side of the Mississippi River and the Illinois side, Davenport, Bettendorf, Rock Island, Moline. And the good thing about that is I was in my home, my hometown. The bad thing about that is I was in my hometown. And
Right.
the first year and a half you're on TV, Dan, you really suck at it. Even if
And now everybody sees you that you know.
Yes.
Right.
And everyone sees you. But I quickly, once I made an adjustment in my thinking, I realized I should be having fun with this. I was doing a lot of weather at the time, and I was like stressing out about it. And I realized, like, why am I not having fun with this? I have 3.5 minutes to ad lib. I can literally say whatever I want. Let's have some And that's when I all of a sudden got better. And all of a sudden I sent a tape to Las Vegas. Nobody called me from Las Vegas, but I, at the same time, had sent one to my sister in Phoenix and say, hey, look, sis, I'm on TV. And she sent that to the local TV station and said,
Get out of here.
My sister wants a job, and I want my sister to have a job in Phoenix. And it ended up in a bin, and they found it, and they said, this is the person we want.
Holy cow. I worked in Vegas, too, for like 6 years, the NBC affiliate. So
it's a good news market.
Yeah, I did Vegas. I did Grand Rapids, Michigan. I did Philadelphia. I did Fresno. I did Palm Springs. I think that's it. And now I do One America News. Okay, so
those are all good markets, by the way. I've seen some great talent come from those markets.
Well, I just jumped around thinking I was getting a bigger market, bigger audience, and more money. And at that time, because I wasn't seeing how we were lying to the American public, I thought what we were doing was right by reading the facts that were coming in from Reuters and the Associated Press and the affiliate with whatever network I was affiliated with. Like, why would the hierarchy at ABC, NBC, CBS sending us the stories on the feed be lying to us, their affiliates? They want us to tell the truth to the American people. Well, then my eyes got opened up when a guy came down the escalator in 2015 and said, you're all fake news. And I started looking around going, are my colleagues fake news? So now you're in Phoenix. You're there for 30, how many years? On which affiliate?
30 years, maybe 35. I think it was like 30.
Okay.
I started at the NBC station.
Yeah.
Took a quick 1 year stint to upstate New York, the capital of New York, Albany.
Okay.
And then back so roughly about 30 years in Phoenix.
Yeah. Now.
22 at the Fox station, which I helped to elevate to the #1 status, and we remained #1 for 22 years.
Of course you did, because people like you and trusted you. So when you threw your hat in the ring in politics, was that 18 or 20? I forget.
Well, I quit my job in 20.
20, okay. Here's the question. What made you, was there one thing or a lot of things like me that was boiling over and you were like, screw this, I'm standing up and I'm saying something now? Give me that in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, it was COVID. COVID was just such a... I started to realize that there was an agenda being pushed so hard, and I went,
there you go.
That's when I went, holy crap, this is the fake news.
Yeah.
It's not that we were pushing out and out lies, but it was half truths.
Right. And covering up and omitting.
Yeah. It's intentionally leaving something out. And that's what the media does. And then the 2020 election happened. We saw Brett Baer go, Biden won Arizona. And I went, no way, no way, no way.
Yep.
And right away, there was a push like, don't talk about any of the election stuff. You must call Joe Biden President-elect Joe Biden. Even though we had protests of 20,000 people in Arizona saying our election, something went wrong, this wasn't right. Nobody wanted to cover that.
Right.
And I love my job. I love the people of this state. They trust me. And I could not put out half truths. And I thought it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And this is really God saying, what are you made of, Kari? And I was praying about it. And I always tell this story. I talked to my husband, Jeff. I said, I want to leave the job. I can't do this. But I was making a fortune, a fortune. I was a 7-figure contract. And I'm like, hon, do you mind if I walk away from that? I mean, not many spouses would say yes, but Jeff said, you can't do what goes against your moral compass. And so as I was really debating this, and I said, God, I know it's the right thing to do. Would you please just answer this question? Am I going to regret this? I'm worried about leaving the money. And at that moment, I grabbed the Bible on my desk. It's a true story. It's probably still here. It's right over there. I opened it up. I just opened it up and I closed my eyes and pointed. And it was 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 7. You bring nothing into this world. It's for certain you take nothing out.
That's right.
I needed to hear that because it was like, you're worried about the money, which is so temporary.
That's right.
Material stuff is temporary. You didn't bring it with you in, and you don't take it with you.
That's right.
But what you do take with you is who you are in God's eyes.
Right. What's your legacy, and what is God seeing you doing through His eyes? You know what? The theme of this edition of the Anchormen Podcast, I started off saying, is journalism dead? I wanted that to be the theme. But something Ben brought up, you just brought up, and I've brought up on my show so many times. And I want to say this again to hammer it home with you, Kari. I never hear liberal journalists talk about their job as a mission from God, being directed by God. Do you know that Ben said almost the exact same words you just said when he changed his mission in life, his career path, and you just said it, and you two weren't listening to each other. You weren't on the show together, but you said almost the exact same things. And the viewers of this podcast right now are going to put that together. Folks, if you're leading a life that you're more worried about the money than you are God, country, and your family, you got your priorities screwed all up. Kari, wow.
Can I say one thing on that?
Of course you can.
I didn't hear Ben. I didn't even know you had Ben. Is it Ben Bergquam?
Yeah, Ben was on right before you, and he said the exact same thing you did about God and asking and God directing him and showing him and mission, and like the same words that I use, you used. It's what I hear from real people trying to be either journalists, good fathers, mothers, patriots, better politicians, better CEOs, whatever it is. When you hear them first say God and you're on a mission and this country and family, and it being 3 months almost to the day, I'm going to bring up our friend Charlie Kirk and what Erica's been going through with liars in the independent media. And I just go, thank God there are people out there like Ben, like you, like others who have seen the light and walked away from the fake news and are out here trying to spread some truth and some light. So thank you, Kari Lake. I love you.
We've been tested. We've been tested in the past few years.
Yes, we have.
2015, when President Trump came down the escalator to 2019, 2020, it was a test. If you stood up and said you like President Trump, they tried to destroy you and lose your job. A lot of people lost everything. Businesses who dared to go to the White House lost, millions of dollars, sometimes more than that. And then 1990 to 1921, 22, I think was a further test. It was really, what are you made of? Because if you lost your job during that time, it was because you didn't want to get a shot that you didn't know enough about.
That's right.
Again, you don't want your children to get a shot. They might have been kicked out of school. 1919 to 2021 was a huge test. That's when people like me, hey, I love Trump, and I was willing to not, act like I didn't because, I was afraid. But then it pushed into the next level. It was like, okay, you passed that test, but can you pass the test if you're willing to walk away from the material goods and the fortune and the money you need to survive?
That's right.
Are you willing
God was testing us, right? And they were pushing us, right? You had elected leaders and these so-called health professionals and the media lying and pushing. And I feel like, and you and I have the same similar story, Kari, we were more in the middle of the road on many issues and open to ideas from both sides and more open being journalists for 3 decades, but they pushed us. And then all the evil in the world, God was using that, like he always does, to show us the light, the good from the bad. And you either chose the right path and the light, or you're one evil you-know-what right now. Because if you went along with the COVID lockdown, and you went along with the 2020 lies, and you went along with all this fake news BS, well, I'm sorry, but you're of the devil right now, kids. And we're not.
Or you're just really, really stupid and didn't see it. And if you're waking up, I mean, some people are just waking up now going, whoa.
True. And we're here for you.
Yeah. Come on. Here.
Yeah, Kari, I know you got to run and we're coming up on the top of the hour. So I want you to now, you got us all the way up to there. We know you ran for office and then Trump brought you on board in the new administration. So speaking of media, I have 2 final questions for you then. Do you think overall journalism is dead? Because Ben said, well, mainstream old school legacy media is dead, but not us new independent citizen journalists. So he thinks it's a rebirth. But also then tell us about the new job with global media, because that's what you're in charge of now in the Trump administration. Kari Lake.
Well, most Americans don't realize that their hard-earned tax dollars, about 900 million, so close to $1 billion, are going to put out a news product and news in foreign countries through outlets like Voice of America, Office of Cuba Broadcasting, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, Middle East Broadcasting Network. And that's a lot of money. I mean, imagine what you could do in a real commercial media outlet. You could put a ton of news out, but really they're designed to put out America's story abroad. And for over the years, it's run rogue. It's run very rogue, hiring some very questionable people, putting out many times news stories and news that has sided with our opponents and our enemies, not with America.
Right.
So I've been tasked with getting this turned around. President Trump told us to boil this thing down to its bare statutory minimum. Nothing is, believe me, nothing in this government runs at what the statute requires. It always grows. The bureaucracy grows out of control. No one ever comes in and says, scale this back until President Trump. And he put the right person at this agency. I went in there and we've been scaling it back. And actually, I'm proud to say that the news product we're putting out is in alignment with our foreign policy. We're no longer putting out anti-American news. Which
Amen.
I think
Thank you.
Yes. I mean, I can't believe I have to say that because we were in the past. And we're working to make sure that we're not hiring people with nefarious backgrounds, because think about it. We're hiring people to do these newscasts into China, into Iran, into Cuba. Some of our product is going into Venezuela. These are some of, Russia. These are some of the people who are considered to be our, enemies in some ways. And so we got to make sure we're not hiring people who are spies or who have nefarious purposes. So it's been a challenge. We've got 5 or 6 lawsuits against us. I value the fact that lawfare means that you're kind of over the target.
You're over the target. Yep.
And the question is, can we keep this thing at to be running in a way that would make Americans proud? Or do we really need to be running 1990s style TV that the American taxpayers are footing the bill for? Is that the most effective way to get America's story out? I don't think it is. I think that we need to modernize and come to grips with the times we're in.
Yeah.
Doing 1990s radio and TV is maybe not the most effective way to spend taxpayer dollars to get America's story out abroad. So I'm analyzing all that and working on that.
So your official title, tell everybody again, and then I have one final question for you.
Well, my official title is Deputy CEO, Chief Executive Officer, but I am the administration's senior agency leader. So I'm leading the agency right now.
So my final one's very simple. I would think as an American, as a veteran, as a patriot, as a 33-year plus veteran journalist, now opinionated talk show host, that if we're putting out a global media message of what America and the U.S. is about, and you're at the helm and Trump is our POTUS, I would think, especially right now, it should be all positive. Yes, I understand that things aren't great for every single American, but people around the globe should see this nation for what it is. And I don't see 15 to 20 million trying to rush into Russia or China or the UK. But they came here for 4 years under Joe. So, again, I'm being facetious. I'd like to know, on the last question to my good friend Kari Lake, your mission statement with your new title, running this global media outfit that we used to waste $1 billion on, what you hope to achieve in the next 3 years under Trump to provide that positive, patriotic message of what America means and what we should be putting out to the globe. Kari?
Well, first of all, we don't need nearly $1 billion to do it, okay?
True. Not when you got these.
iHeartMedia has a whole, radio empire and all over, and I think they have a $90 million budget, which is probably high. So I'm probably the only agency leader in the history of this government that's ever gone to Capitol Hill, and I've been doing this for months now, talking to the appropriators, because when they appropriate money to you, you have to spend it. And I said, please do not give us money. We don't want that kind of money. Don't give us that kind of taxpayer. We don't want it. We don't need it. Don't give us that much. So we're hoping that they will abide by that. And if they don't, I'll be calling them out publicly. But what I would like to do, people don't know what this agency is, U.S. Agency for Global Media. We are the United States media agency for global audiences. So we're not putting out stuff about, necessarily American life here, but it's more about what our policies are doing and how they're affecting other countries. Sure. And I think we're doing a really good job at that right now. Our viewership is quite high. People are, before with the agency, or the people running the agency before me, they were just putting out AP and Reuters stories all across the globe, paying tens of millions of dollars to those two jokes of an agency. And I said, we're not doing that. We're not paying AP and Reuters.
Good for you.
And we're doing rip and read and putting it out. So we're putting original news out where we're talking about the most consequential administration in the history of our country and how it's affecting places like Iran for the Iranian audience, and what President Trump's new national security policy and strategy means for the Middle East, what it means for Cuba, what it means for the world, what our plans are. And I will tell you, these countries are eating it up. They want to know this. They're finally going, whoa, this is interesting stuff. So we're going to continue doing that. And we might, who knows, maybe we should start streaming some great American podcasts and putting them in, hundreds of different languages for the whole world to know what Americans are talking about.
Hey, I would love to see the Anchormen podcast overseas and tell people why America is so great and why our policy is not only good for America, it's good for your country too. Unless you have some horrific regime running you that needs to be removed, we want other countries to prosper and be free. That's why we always talk about democracy and trying to spread it, because this republic has done pretty damn well for almost 250 years. Nobody's come close to the strides, the accomplishments, the things we've done in such a short amount of time. When you look at other nations that are thousands of years old, we've come a long way and done better. And so I'm so glad that you're at the helm of this national media voice that spreads internationally, because I know you're going to keep it fair, just, and patriotic. Kari Lake, my good friend, God bless you. We love you.
And we love you right back.
Thanks for giving us this much time. And I'm so glad I learned about Iowa. Kari, I didn't know any of that. I have a much deeper appreciation and love for you.
Great people. It's a little cold. You got to be strong to go there in the winter. But I was blessed to be helping President Trump campaign there in Iowa. And I just said, I want to get back. I want to at least have a little place here to come back, because it's like good to touch base back.
Yes, always. And it made you who you are. You think if a little Kari Lake would have grown up in downtown Los Angeles, which a bunch of liberal influence around for the last 50 years of your life, you wouldn't be Kari Lake of today. So those influences on that farm in that small town, your dad being a football coach, all that, those Midwest values, that's who I am, who my wife is, who my friends are. I go back there all the time to the Midwest. That's good salt of the earth people like my friend Kari Lake. God bless you. Get back to work, Kari. Thank you.
All right. Love you guys.
Take care. Oh, man, that was a fun show. even though we missed our friend Riley. Thank you so much for joining us again for another Anchormen podcast here on the One America News Network. If you're watching, whether it's on our YouTube TV channel, on X or True, thank you so much. Please share OAN with your friends. The homepage is OANN.com. That's where you can find everything. You can download the app for a couple bucks a month. We're on tons of new carriers now, like Dish and Sling and Spectrum. So we're in like 35, 45 million households. We're growing. We're getting bigger every day. And that's all thanks to you. Be sure to check out Riley's show. He's on at 6 Eastern. I'm on at 8. Then you got Matt and Chanel after that. We do like 15, 16 hours of news every day in addition to our opinionated talk shows. And then we do 2 of these 1 hour long podcasts every week. We drop them on Thursdays and Fridays around 7 p.m. And then we rerun them throughout the weekend over on OAN and AWE, as well as posting them on social media. So big thank you to you. We couldn't do any of this without our faithful viewers and fans. And I got to say big thanks to my friends at Grunt Style for helping to sponsor the Anchormen podcast. We'll be back. I think, we'll do one more next week, maybe another one right before Christmas. Then we'll take a little holiday break. So for all of you, thank you so much for tuning in to the Anchormen podcast, and I'll see you next week.
Want to see more great videos like this? Click on the link below to subscribe to OAN Live and watch Dan Ball's Real America and The Matt Gaetz Show on Dish Channel 212. Tune in, subscribe, and watch today.